of the RSS, Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, has triggered a massive debate with his advice to Muslims. In an interview to the organizer and Panchajanya, Mr. Bhagwat said that Muslims have nothing to fear in India, but they must abandon their boisterous rhetoric of supremacy. He stated that Muslims must abandon the narrative that they are an exalted race, that they will rule this land once again, and that their path is the right one, and that adopted by the others is wrong. Now, there have been strong reactions coming in to what Mr. Mohan Bhagwat said, chiefly by the AIMIM, Mr. Asaduddin Owaisi as well. There were a whole host of issues that were covered in that interview to both Panchajanya and the organizer by the Sarsanchalak of the RSS. He spoke about Hindus having been at war for a period of more than 1,000 years against invasions, and he also spoke about the need to combat what he called the enemy within. Let's in fact listen into what the Sarsanchalak had to tell in that interview.
हिंदू भाव कहने से इस्लाम की पूजा को कोई बाधा नहीं आती। हिंदू हमारी पहचान है, राष्ट्रीयता है, हिंदू हमारी प्रवृत्ति है, सबको अपना मानने की, सबको साथ लेकर चलने की। मेरा ही सही, तुम्हारा गलत, ऐसा नहीं। तुम्हारी जगह तुम्हारा ठीक है, मेरे जगह मेरे ठीक है। झगड़ा क्यों करें, मिलकर चले, यही हिंदुत्व है। तो उसके मानने वाले लोगों की संख्या बनी रहती है तो भारत एक रहता है, और वो भारत दुनिया को एकता की ओर ले जाता है। ये केवल भारत की बात नहीं है, मानव कल्याण की बात है। आप कल्पना करें कि इस विश्व में हिंदू समाज अगर गायब हो जाता है तो क्या होगा इसका? सब लोग किसका प्रभुत्व दुनिया पर, इसके लिए झगड़ा करेंगे, कर ही रहे। तो गारंटी किससे है? गारंटी हिंदू से है। हिंदुस्तान हिंदुस्तान बना रहे, सीधी बात है। इसमें जो आज हमारे भारत में मुसलमान हैं उनको कोई नुकसान नहीं, वो है, वो रहना चाहते हैं, रहे, पूर्वजों के पास वापस आना चाहते हैं, आए, उनके मन पर है। हिंदुओं में ये आग्रह है नहीं, इस्लाम को कोई खतरा नहीं है। हाँ, हम बढ़े, हम एक समय राजा थे, हम फिर से राजा बनना, ये छोड़ना पड़ेगा। हम ही सही बाकी सब गलत, ये छोड़ना पड़ेगा। हम अलग है इसलिए हम अलग ही रहेंगे, हम सबके साथ मिलकर नहीं रह सकते, ये छोड़ना पड़ेगा। किसी को भी छोड़ना पड़ेगा। ऐसा सोचने वाला कोई हिंदू है उसको भी छोड़ना पड़ेगा, कम्युनिस्ट है उनको भी छोड़ना पड़ेगा। इसलिए जनसंख्या असंतुलन ये भी एक महत्व का प्रश्न है, उसका विचार करना चाहिए।
Now, the comments made by Mr. Mohan Bhagwat have drawn a very sharp response from leaders of the opposition parties, with the chief of the All India Majlis-e-Ittehadul Muslimin, Mr. Asaduddin Owaisi, accusing Mr. Bhagwat of trying to divide the country. Hitting out, Mr. Owaisi said that there are enough Hindus who feel the boisterous rhetoric of the supremacy of the RSS. A host of other opposition leaders, including those from the Congress and the left, also criticized Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, asserting that law was supreme in the country, and that they've accused him of trying to doubt Muslims and their patriotism towards India.
Neither Mohan Bhagwat nor Narendra Modi or Muslim or a Christian, nobody is above the law, above the constitution. According to the constitution, everybody is equal. And why he should preach these things? First, he should treat everybody as equal. That is the constitution. If he believes in the constitution, this kind of statement should not come.
I don't want to comment much of their agenda is to divide people. Our agenda is to unite people.
Thank you.
डॉक्टर मोहन भागवत जी ने दोबारा मुसलमानों पर शक कर, उनकी विचारधारा पर शक करते हुए, उनकी देश के प्रति शहादत को शक करते हुए, उनको चिन्हित करके एक दुश्मन की तरह जो प्रोजेक्ट करने का काम वो कर रहे हैं। भारत के लोग जो सैकड़ों साल से मुसलमानों के साथ रचते बसते आ रहे हैं, कि आज तक भारत के मुसलमानों ने इस देश के हिंदुओं को अपना नेता बनाया। इससे ज्यादा आपको क्या सबूत चाहिए कि आज भी मुसलमान को अपना नेता ना मानकर इस देश के सेकुलर हिंदू भाइयों को अपना नेता मानता है। तो डॉक्टर मोहन भागवत जी, इस संविधान के नीचे कोई भी ताकत, कोई भी पंथ, कोई भी धर्म अपने आप को ऊपर नहीं कर सकता, चाहे आपकी हिंदुत्व की विचारधारा हो या आप जो मुसलमानों से संबंधित बात कर रहे हो.
Give up this fetish for perpetual Hindu-Muslim divide and actually look at, seriously, sincerely, it's not out of any skepticism, look at the issues of unemployment, price rise, concentration of wealth, systematic capture of institutions. I think those are the issues. Mr. Mohan Bhagwat should change their trajectory in nation's interest.
Protesting.
Basically, Bharatiya Janata Party, they are power crazy. They don't bother not only for Muslims, not only for Hindu community. That is the reason they are not bothering what is happening there. If anybody is dying, let him die. It is the policy of Bharatiya Janata Party.
If one feels supreme, everybody should feel supreme. This is what our great poet Subramanya Bharati said. All are kings of this country. All are equal. All are the same weight. All have the same weight. Does Mohan Bhagwat agree to this? This is a country where everyone is equal. Every citizen is equal, irrespective of their religion, caste, faith, anything. All citizens are equal in this country. That's what our constitution says. Does Mohan Bhagwat agree to this? People should ask him.
Now, the Bharatiya Janata Party has endorsed the comments made by Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, saying that there's no better place than Bharat for Muslims, thanks to the philosophy of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas.
Today we have a government of Prime Minister Modi that is working on the agenda of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas. A government that relentlessly is working on development for everyone, without distinguishing between any Indian citizen. And that's the correct position, because our constitution treats all Indian citizens equally. There are a few parties that over the last several decades have always had an appeasement policy with the eye on vote bank politics. That may be their politics, but that is not in sync with the politics of our party and our government, which focuses on all Indians equally.
Well, let me in fact take this across to Mr. Prafulla Ketkar, the editor of The Organizer, who joins us. Thank you so much, Mr. Ketkar, for speaking to Times Now. You interviewed the Sarsanchalak of the RSS, Mr. Mohan Bhagwat. Let me in fact immediately dive in and ask you the specific context in which he said that Muslims in India need to abandon the rhetoric of supremacy. What specifically did he mean, sir?
See, please go through the interview in detail. Don't go by the headlines made by some, selective quoting of Mr. Mohan Bhagwat by some English media newspapers. It was my question, so I can tell you categorically. The question was, over the past few days or past few years, Hindu society has become more vocal about rights. Sometimes it is more aggressive. While Sangha has softened the stand, that is the allegation. How do you see this? That was my specific question. And he said, it is but natural because for more than 1,000 years, Hindu society has been perpetually in the, facing foreign aggressions, foreign influences, foreign conspiracies. But now after independence, the things have changed. And now, therefore, the Hindu society must introspect and more focus on just without getting into the sloganeering and the aggression. It should more look for internal reforms. In a subsequent to this, he said, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj also had, because I had asked him about, he meeting certain Muslim leaders, talking about the common DNA. So he particularly said that this has to be a strategy. This is the Hindu way of dialogue. While asking about the the Muslim attitude, he categorically mentioned that the Sangha approach or Sangha growth should not, in fact, afraid any of the Muslims. What they have to forego is some of the leaders who play this supremacist attitude. We are separate, we have a different way of worship, we have ruled this country for more than 600 years. These are the exact words that he has used. If they don't get away by this kind of rhetorics, then there should not be any problem between Hindus and Muslims. In fact, he mentioned that before British arrived, we have almost resolved this entire issue of Hindu-Muslim conflict. So whoever is giving the reaction, this is based on half-baked knowledge and the headline grabbing tendencies of certain media houses. If you go through this interview, it is available on organizer website.
Yes.
You will get the clear picture of what he is trying to say.
Mr. Ketkar, thanks for clarifying that. Just as a follow-up, because we also heard what Mr. Bhagwat told you in that interview in its entirety, especially about this aspect. He also said that if there are certain Hindus or even communists who adopt this kind of a supremacist attitude in their rhetoric, even that must be shunned.
Mr. D. Raja should listen to it, because these are the people who have directly or indirectly supported the idea of Pakistan, the supremacist theories of historians, mainly supported by the communists. In fact, Dr. Bhagwat is clearly saying that none of the communities in India, irrespective of ideological position, nobody should have this supremacist attitude. And he has categorically mentioned not just Muslims, but even Hindus and communists.
Yes.
And there is a reason for this. There is a reason, because I had asked this question about this Hindu aggression and the allegation that Sangha had changed its strategy or positioning, and whether Sangha has softened its stand on Hindutva. And in response to this, he said at one point for mobilization, Jai Shri Ram was fine, but that is not going to solve our issues. In fact, he said we should really imitate what Prabhu Shri Ram stood for. So internal reforms, resolving internal differences, any kind of discrimination should get rid of, and any kind of supremacist attitude also should get rid of. In that context, he made this clarification.
Just as a follow-up to that, once again, Mr. Ketkar, because Mr. Mohan Bhagwat has had an active outreach with members of the Muslim community. He did meet, for instance, S.Y. Qureshi as well as Najib Jung, among others. And one of the facets of that interaction that those individuals brought out was that Mr. Bhagwat had taken exception to references such as Kafir being used by certain members of the Muslim community against non-Muslims. So when he's talking about the abandonment of this supremacist rhetoric, is that what he's specifically referring to as well?
Yes, that is what I could make out through his answer. See, whenever you are calling somebody as Kafir, he is talking about that supremacist attitude. That is why the terms that he has used, they specifically mentioned about these particular rhetorics that are used by certain fundamentalist Muslim elements, that we are separate, we are different, we don't follow this ancient tradition, we don't believe in this. And because when they say we, there is somebody who has they. And what is that they? In the fundamentalist concept, it is known as Kafir. So in that context, I think we need to relocate this interview and understand it in its entirety.
And one more question to you, Mr. Ketkar. What did Mr. Bhagwat specifically mean when he's talking about us being at the cusp of another possible war, and that there are certain internal enemies that need to be contended with? So who are these internal enemies that Mr. Bhagwat is referring to? That's how he's been quoted, sir.
No, what he said, now there is external aggression is not there, but there are internally. This was the question related to more about Atmanirbharta. He said now foreign aggression is not there, but foreign conspiracies are there, certain theories are there, whether Aryan Dravidian divide or dividing people on regional or religious line, these are all colonial constructs. In that context, he was talking about that there are certain people intellectually, socially, and politically taking forward that colonial construct of seeing India as divided. You know, somebody talking about of the stature of main opposition party leader, when they talk, these things like imposition of homogeneity, imposition of language. He actually said that, you know, this diversity is our strength, and we are diverse because we are culturally, all of us are Hindus, and this diversity should be celebrated. Whoever says that our way is the only way is a problematic thing, that is un-Hindu. That is his fundamental argument. So whenever he's talking about the internal enemy or the conspirators who are following the colonial narratives or the foreign conspiracies, he is basically talking about seeing India through a fragmented prism, rather than prism of unity.
One more quote that is drawing some controversy, and I'll await a clarification on this too, sir. Since this is a war, this is what Mr. Bhagwat has been quoted as saying, since this is a war, people are likely to get overzealous. Although this is not desirable, yet provocative statements will be uttered. What did he mean by this, sir?
That's the same thing, that, you know, when you are in a state of war and you see each other with misperception, he said, you know, continuous aggressions have said because many invaders have arrived in India, and that fundamentalism to fundamentalism is not the answer.
Okay.
We need to rectify our internal problems. We have to bridge the divide. We have to have a self-corrective mechanism as a society. Then only we can find the answers, what he called as the Hindu way of finding answers.
Yes.
And that's why he, in fact, is suggesting to the Hindu society that we should be more accommodative. He gave the example of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. He said once Shivaji Maharaj was coronated, he went on to bonhomie with Qutub Shah, put certain ideas to him, ensured that Hindus get representation. He in fact said Hindus should get representation in Qutub Shah's cabinet, and he also complied to it. So he, by giving that example, he actually said there is a possibility of negotiation. If you believe that you have ancient tradition, if you have strength, then you should talk from the position of the strength and be more accommodative.
A final question to you now, Mr. Ketkar. You in fact shed a lot of light on how the interview panned out and some of the specific responses that Mr. Bhagwat has given, and also laid out the context. A final question, the likes of Mr. Owaisi, among others, have said that we do not require this kind of a prescription from Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, that he's attaching certain conditionalities to the citizenship of Muslims in an independent India. That's Mr. Owaisi's specific response. How would you respond to what Mr. Owaisi has said?
I'm you know, as a journalist, I'm you know, last person who can give any advice to Owaisi. But perhaps Dr. Mohan Bhagwat, what he has said is this supremacist attitude. The people who stood for the partition on the basis of religion in 1905, when British tried to partition Bengal, the same Hindus and Muslims stood together and fought against it. British were forced to take back the partition in 1911. Why did some people stood for the partition on religious identity? One. Two, even after that partition, why this rhetoric of we are separate, we are independent, we don't believe in Vande Mataram? Entire, you know, freedom struggle, especially the Vanga Banga movement, was based on the slogan of Vande Mataram. What is the problem that suddenly became, you know, to some of the fundamentalist elements within the Muslim community? So these are the questions that arise. And we know that the legacy that Owaisi stands for, and what happened to Hyderabad and Razakar and entire liberation movement that we have seen under leadership of RSS, and which was militarily supported by Vallabhbhai Patel also. So I don't see, I'm just stating the historical facts.
Perhaps Mr. Owaisi should also see the entire interview before jumping to conclusions. Thank you so much, Mr. Prafulla Ketkar of the organizer. You interviewed Mr. Mohan Bhagwat and you've given us a lot of clarity about what he said and the context in which he said them. Thank you so much for speaking to us, sir. We'll now shift our attention to the hearing that's underway with regards to what happened